Tell us a little bit about how you work with partners around the marketplace.
There are some ISVs out there that marketplace is one of their best lead sources, and it tends to be, where the majority of their leads come from, even better than their website. And then there are other people that have so many different marketplace listings that just crickets, nothing, don't hear anything. And I think, especially for if we talk about outside of the ISV community, CSPs and MSPs that are coming in there with these consulting offerings, even now, so they can partner with an ISV to offer those private offers. And there's so many different ways to use marketplace now. But in particular, what we do working with partners is we help them build their presence on marketplace. We help them establish their presence with the cloud program. And more recently, we've been brought in to audit a lot of existing marketplace listings. So, a few years ago, it was like, what's AppSource? And a consulting offer wasn't even an option. You had to have a product. Now there are more than 12,000 listings on AppSource. And that's just United States if you were kind of to do it by language. And so it's quite saturated. And those partners that are 2 listings, 20 listings are wondering why crickets. I've done all of the things. I've followed the format that Microsoft's put out there. I've gotten published. I've checked the fields. And what we've found, and we've, done these audits and worked with partners on hundreds of listings, is that there are just these minor things, such minor things when you're going into marketplace that can make a world of difference, that it's not something you're thinking about as you're building it, because you're really just trying to get published. You're really working against the checklist that Microsoft has given you, but you're not really thinking about it from a marketing perspective of how is this going to be received by the audience, the intended audience I want. So sometimes it's, I didn't check the right boxes, so I'm not even showing up for the right audience that I want. Sometimes it's, I didn't have the right logo size, so I crammed in whatever I had. And so when we're looking at a card view of many different offerings, your offer looks like you didn't take the time and care to really put something out there that was going to speak to an audience. Titles get truncated because you actually are allowed way more characters in your title than what can show up in a card view. So even the workload might be missed depending on how long your title is. So there's all of these minor issues that you can have even with a published marketplace listing that, we wanted to go from doing this one-on-one for larger partners to actually making it accessible to kind of have these best practices and really elevate your visibility in your listing with our self-audit. So I think that was the
So,
question you were alerting
so
to.
let's get into this self-product, because that's what, caught my interest.
Yeah.
I put my listing up there as a partner. I'm not getting, the push I need. I'm looking at it. It looks fine, but what will the audit help me do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the self-audit that Rick is mentioning, we launched recently after working with so many partners and so many marketplace listings. And this is for AppSource in particular. And I should mention that it's also for the consulting listings because, of course, ISVs have a whole different category of having to qualify and be certified for being able to put their listing up. So we'll put that aside for a minute. So for these consulting listings, there's a number of requirements to meet. But as I mentioned, when you're just trying to get published, you're not actually thinking about the things that most clients are looking for when they go on those marketplace listings. So our template actually walks you through what a scoring would look like based on how you're being presented to your intended audience. It'll ask you things like, is your title truncated, for example? Is your image distorted? Do you have supporting assets? Are you, actually walking through the engagement and what's required of the client? Because that's always a question. How much of my time is going to be needed to be able to either do this workshop or implementation or those types of things, POC, and we'll give you that scorecard. So you're giving yourself kind of very easy 1, 2, or 3 in each category. And then looking back at, if I scored a 3, great, that's something that I've taken care of and addressed really well. If I scored a 1, what am I doing wrong? And we have a step-by-step guide that then leads you through the recommendations. The other thing that we think is real helpful in this scenario, because when we think about competitors, we have to think about just the people we hear about on sales calls. I'm looking at this product and I'm looking at this pocket. I'm looking at this partner and this partner. But actually in the marketplace, your competitors could be wildly different because it's more about which check boxes you hit on the back end of the listing than it is about, hey, I usually, run into Catapult Systems. Well, Catapult Systems been acquired. I usually run into Centric Consulting, and they're actually not in the same category as me. So we have this whole competitive analysis based again on a search that would happen in marketplace to be able to say, how are you competing with those that are showing up for the same listing? So we tell you how to do that search. And then things like pricing, you may have a completely appropriate price when you're talking about implementation, and you and I can talk through what an implementation entails, which is far more than you can put in a Microsoft Marketplace listing. And then your competitor might say, hey, implementation free. And then you're thinking, what? How am I going to compete with this free implementation? Of course, when you get into the details, it's a bit more of a bit of a trial, a little bit of a bait and switch, but something is offered free. But I imagine they're getting far more clicks with that creative pricing tactic. So those are the types of things in the competitive analysis that we like to call out. Make sure you're understanding who you're competing against. If they don't have a truncated title, if they're not using stock images. Oh, and the one that is just like the most heartbreaking for partners is they've created this beautiful listing. They have these supporting assets that you can download and share with your team and be able to, come back and talk about the things on the marketplace that were most interesting. We found all too commonly those supporting assets get downloaded and they have no contact information on them because, of course, we just assumed, they're looking at the marketplace listing. They knew who we are. Why do we have to then put our contact information? Because, decisions take time and people come back or they can't come back.
Or they send them to somebody who wasn't on AppSource to look at.
Exactly. They're like, I think I remember who that was. It doesn't say here. So those are the types of quick tips and learnings you can get from doing this audit. And we really wanted to bring this opportunity to partners of different sizes, because as I said, we work with larger partners on ongoing work and retainers. And this gives any partner, whether you're a one-man shop to, a Longview Systems, the ability to go in and be able to audit themselves, make those quick differences and expand their reach and visibility just by, these little tips and tricks that you just may not see because you're only looking at your own audit while we're looking at hundreds of audits or hundreds of marketplace listings at a time.
So Erica, do you have a couple examples? You don't have to name names of companies, but little tweaks you've made to an AppSource listing that made a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, you would be surprised at how much the visuals matter because in the companies that we've worked with, the visuals tend to be the last thing that you think about. A lot of companies are really trying to just figure out what does that consulting service entail? Like, how do we package this? Because we're not an ISV, so we haven't packaged a product. So now we're packaging a product that's a consulting listing. And so a lot of time and effort goes into that packaging. And again, that the graphics are kind of the last thing that we see done. So many distorted card view something. We just took our logo, we slammed it in there, but it's like a very specific pixelation and size that you have to meet. The other thing is,
and just on that, a lot of times the person who's uploading the AppSource listing is more of a technical person because it's a bit of a daunting task at times. How do I get this up, get this working, get all the assets up there? So it's not a marketer. And I think a lot of stuff gets like half finished and you're right, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, even some of our current clients are like, don't look at my marketplace listings. We want to look at them before you do. And we're like, well, we want you to help get you more out of them. But that is, you're exactly right. It's been done. It maybe hasn't been done well. We haven't looked at it again. And we're also not getting anything out of it. So that's,
and I think, well, I know for a fact that these listings are going to be more important for ISVs going forward. They're going to become a bigger part of co-sell. Because I know Microsoft sellers also see the listings, but they see them differently than the public, or they see them differently than the partners do. And if you're not up there and you're not active, when it comes to a co-sell opportunity, you may not be, brought into the party.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's something we haven't talked about. Whereas once your marketplace listing is published and live, that actually doesn't mean you're co-sell ready. So the sellers at Microsoft cannot come and offer this offering to their clients until you have a co-sell ready status, which is a completely different arm and effort than what has just been done. So that's another thing that we often see is, they get the marketplace listing up and they're like, okay, everyone can see us. Microsoft can see us, and our clients or potential prospective clients can see us. And that's not true. It is public, but that's not how the Microsoft sellers or the Microsoft account executives get access to who they should be referring work to. That has a whole co-sell ready component to it.